Cow lips.
Cow lips.
Pretty good cow lips. You've done that before, haven't you?
Maybe. Hey everybody, welcome to Seriously Lighthearted Yoga. You don't have to look at our hips just by themselves anymore. You can look at our shoulders or the hips of our arms. We're going to be talking about your shoulders today. So it's the hip of the arm as opposed to the hip of the leg. Or the shoulder of the leg.
Or you could call it the shoulder.
The shoulder of the leg. Yeah, or we'll just call this the shoulder.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly.
Why not?
Be consistent with the rest of the, I don't know, world.
Yeah. So guys, shoulders. What do we want to know about them? Well, the shoulders, again, like the hips, are kind of that linchpin between your chest, that rib area right here, and your arms. They kind of link the two together. It's what we call a shoulder. It's that joint. And again, the shoulder is, like the hips, a ball and socket joint. So this big arm bone right here, not as big as our leg bone, but still a big arm bone, kind of smashes up into our shoulder. And the shoulder joint has a little bit more mobility than the hips. You can kind of move it around a lot more easily. The joint is just not quite as impacted. Like the ball doesn't get quite as far in with the shoulder as it does in the hips. The joint's a little smaller. And from here, the shoulders bear a lot of the weight of the upper torso when we have our hands on the ground in yoga and things. And if you're, say, doing arm balances or handstand or downward facing dog, the shoulders are kind of that point between the arms, all this effort, and all of this effort again.
Your hip effort, too.
Yeah, in part. And they can move, again, in similar ways to the hips. They can go forward, back, down. They also have that kind of free rotation that we talked about with the hips. You can move them in kind of any sort of circular way. From here, you can also rotate it. So like if you bend your arm and then just think of bringing that palm out, that's kind of what the rotation that I'm talking about here. We have a little bit of that in the shoulders as well, sort of like the hips, like a serving person or something.
Yep,
carrying a tray.
Mm-hmm.
But the shoulder blades are kind of like the equivalent of the hips down in your hips. They do carry a lot of the weight. They hold a lot of the muscles that are maintaining your shoulder stability and form what's called the shoulder girdle. So in poses where you are using your hands and things, you'll find that your shoulder blades also become very important. And I mentioned the shoulder blades more so than with the hips because your shoulder blades have a lot more movement and they do move a lot. And the positioning of your shoulder blades in your yoga postures is going to be impactful to how the posture feels for you. So I just mentioned that now. We'll go over that later in future videos, but just a point for you to be aware of at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And oftentimes when you're talking about form with your shoulders, it's stemmed from where your shoulder blades are at. So long as you're doing the right things with your shoulder blades are in the right position, the rest of your shoulder is going to be doing what it needs to be doing.
Relatively good position. There are a couple other points we'll look at too, but yeah.
Absolutely. So it's a very strong joint. It is perfectly capable of holding your weight, for sure.
Yep.
It doesn't do it every...
Handstands are a thing.
yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't do it every day like your hips do. So like Kai said, it's not as if you want to say
it's
impacted, I think it's the
easier to
adjective
hurt.
to use.
Yeah.
So that's what gives you the extra mobility. It's easier to injure if you're not being careful. So be aware of what they do. Again, like we told you yesterday, play around with your shoulders, do things.
Woo!
Feel
have
it.
Fun.
Feel it, yeah, have fun. Get to know your shoulders, and that will serve your yoga practice, at least your physical yoga practice, well in the future. So give somebody a high five. That involves the shoulder. And
Indeed it does.
We'll see you guys tomorrow, I guess.